Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cardiac Wire Show. My name is Jake Fishman. I'm the host of the show and the editor of the Cardiac Wire, and we have a great episode for you all today. We have David Konur from Cardiovascular Logistics. David's the CEO there and has a long history running really thriving cardiovascular practices. David, welcome to the show.
Jake, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here today.
Really excited to have you here. We're going to be talking about all the things that you've learned and that you're doing in cardiology and what you're up to through cardiovascular logistics and the role of private equity in cardiology, there's a lot to talk about there. To start us off, if you could just give us a background to yourself and your history in cardiology, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, for the last 25 years, I was the CEO of Cardiovascular Institute of the South, a large cardiology group based out of Houma, Louisiana, with practices in Louisiana, Mississippi, and then contracts all the way up to Illinois. And a year ago, I transitioned into my new role as the CEO of Cardiovascular Logistics, a private equity-backed platform. And it's been a very exciting first year at CVL.
Great. So 25 years as the CEO of a pretty big cardiology practice. How old were you when you took on that role?
I was 29. And so I joke and say I worked at CIS in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and my 50s.
All right. That's quite a history. So I've noticed that, actually both of those companies have had some really significant expansion. What are some of maybe tell us a little bit about the expansion and then also some of the lessons learned throughout that process?
Sure. So, CIS is now a 40-year-old cardiology practice founded by Dr. Craig Walker in 1983 and has just had an amazing storied growth story behind it. And, over the 25 years that I served as CEO, we certainly grew geographically pretty significantly. But in 2013 in particular, we were looking to see whether or not the CIS model would be successful anywhere in the country, or was there something unique to the state of Louisiana? And so we opened up and ventured and partnered with a group in Alabama to test our model to see whether we could be successful in other states. And within 5 years, we had built a very successful program with our partners in Birmingham, and it proved that our model could be successful anywhere. And that's really where CVL was born. From the market, we went to Meridian, Mississippi, opened a practice there. And then roughly 3 years ago, went up to Naperville, Illinois, and Elmhurst, and took 19 cardiologists from hospital employment back into private practice. And again, proved that not only was the model a success, but that in doing so, we could change how the integration strategy for a health system. Because in our model, and this is, Jake, something that's different about us, we actually like to partner with our hospitals. And so, in Illinois, we partnered with Edward Elmhurst Health System, and our practice up there services the hospital to this day. And so a year ago, I had been talking to private equity for just about every year of my 25 years. but we never found the right partner. And what I mean by that is truly a partner that understood that it not only is healthcare very local, but healthcare has a number of stakeholders that need to be valued. We have obviously our focus, and our sole focus is on our patients. And our mission is to provide our patients with the highest quality cardiovascular care available. And to that end, we make 5 pledges: technological superiority, research, education, compassion, and communication. But in that ecosystem, the hospitals play a role as well. And our critically ill patients, we need strong hospital partners. And in the traditional, what I would call the traditional private equity model, it's really about removing as much of the care from other sites of service as quickly as possible, and not necessarily working together for the good of the community. When we met Lee Equity, they had just it was an immediate feeling I had about them, that they understood that our success came from the model that we had spent 40 years putting together. And they bought into that, and they bought into that wholeheartedly. And so their role for us is really to support us as we take regional leaders and build our national platform.
All right, so for the regional leaders, are there any specific things that you're looking for when you're looking to partner with practices in different metros?
Yeah, we're actually pretty picky. Philosophically, we have to be very much aligned, and that starts with our focus on our patients, and focus on quality. To be honest with you, 2/3 of the practices that we've looked at in this first year, we've walked away from because there wasn't that philosophical alignment, which is something that I learned in our first venture. That if you're not philosophically 100% aligned, then you're going to really struggle down the road. And so we took the learnings from the early years back in 2013 through 18 and really have put them into practice as we are expanding across the country. And what's also nice about it is our team's been together for decades. It's a very mature team. We love what we do. We're very passionate about what we do. And so that's been definitely part of the recipe of our success.
One of our publications focuses on radiology, and I feel like, I don't know, for the last 5 or 6 years, we've been consistently talking about private equity and radiology, and I know it's similar in other specialties, but it seems like maybe for the last 12 months is where we really started seeing chatter about private equity and cardiology picking up. Where do you see in the overall, I guess, like adoption or expansion cycle of private equity and cardiology? Like, where are we in that? This is the ball game. Like, what inning are we in?
Well, we're definitely in the first inning. We've made it to the ballpark, and we're starting to play, but we're definitely in the first inning at this point in time. But it is growing very, very quickly. And in our first year, we went from 65 cardiologists to 150 in 10 months. That's a pretty fast clip. But again, all like-minded physicians, many of which we had known for a very long time.
Okay, so understanding that, like a ball game, the rest of the game, it might go in 9 innings, but it's not going to be linear, right? There'll be changes and shifts. And how do you foresee private equity's role in cardiology evolving?
Well, it's it's interesting, all the focus on the private equity piece. To me, private equity is, Lee is my financial partner. Before that, my financial partner were traditional banks. Today, I have an equity partner that's equally interested and aligned with our vision to fundamentally change how we provide cardiovascular services in this country, who recognize that we have $60 billion worth of waste in our specialty, and are helping us put the resources together to root that waste out, to get really involved in value-based care so that every dollar that we spend on providing care actually goes towards the care of our patients. And so I think we're going to see, the role of private equity in the cardiovascular space. There's such opportunity to really move our specialty forward and reduce the cost of healthcare. It's always interesting to me when people bring up private equity, said, "Oh, but isn't private equity going to increase the cost of care? All they want to do is increase pricing." And I sit there and I go, it's very interesting to me that one would think by putting the care of patients into the hands of physicians would increase the cost of care, because nothing could be further from the truth. Cardiovascular Logistics is a physician-owned, physician-led platform focused on delivering high-quality care to cardiovascular patients across the country.
I feel like in the last couple of years, like a half dozen private equity-backed platforms have popped up, and not every platform is the same and has the same strategy, and not every PE group has the same strategy. Like, what do you foresee as some of the pros and cons of these, next 9 innings of the ball game? Like, what are the positives and negatives that might pop up?
Well, I certainly worry that I worry that some platforms are trying to roll up cardiology for the sake of simply rolling up cardiology. And any platform that, if one platform were to fail, that wouldn't bode well for the industry. On the positive side, I think there's a lot to be gained by having the financial resources to do things that otherwise one would never be able to do. Jake, when you think about it in healthcare, why do hospitals and physicians rarely innovate in how we deliver care in the country? Well, why is that? And the answer is really simple. We don't innovate because we're waiting for a payer source to pay for whatever that item is before we move in that direction. CIS took a leadership role early on in the virtual care space when we built a virtual care center in Lafayette, Louisiana in 2015, long before the pandemic. We spent $8 million building this virtual care center when we couldn't find another one to go look at. There was no center for us to go look at and learn from their experiences. But we knew that by providing some of our care virtually, and providing it 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year, it would improve access for our patients and improve quality. And so we invested in that. Then the pandemic struck, and our colleagues were all going, how did you all become virtual so quickly? And the answer was, we didn't wait for a pandemic to invest in that technology. Today, Medicare pays for principal care management, transitional care management, chronic care management, RPM, telemedicine visits. All of that came out, long after we had invested in it. So today, the virtual care center, is a revenue generating center, but the innovation came because we believed that it was the right thing to do for our patients. And with that same philosophy now, having a strong financial partner, we are going to continue to innovate in how we deliver care at Cardiovascular Logistics and thereby change how cardiovascular care is delivered in our country.
Kudos on that. That was a great foresight. Curious. So I know I hate to keep on picking on private equity, but understanding that maybe there's some other specialties where, say, the groups themselves didn't work out, or the physicians that were in them didn't view that as like working out for their career. And understand that, we have this next 9 innings of the ball games to make sure that it works out as well as possible. If you were to envision this, the evolution of private equity and cardiology, what do you think has to happen to make sure that it has the best result as possible for, all stakeholders? So, patients, physicians, and the private equity partners.
Yeah, I think the key to that, the key is actually very simple. The physicians have to be in the driver's seat. And this was something that Lee bought into as, a part of our vision. We have to be truly a physician-led organization. And we have to allow and support our physicians to be hyper-focused on quality. And in the process, as we process improve, recognize where the waste is and start rooting it out. And so I think who's in the driver's seat, if you look at the successes and failures of private equity in healthcare, I could only imagine that the more the clinicians were involved in the strategic direction of the company and the decisions that were being made at the very highest level, those platforms, and certainly within the cardiovascular space, are going to be the ones that are successful. And that is, when you look at the leadership structure at Cardiovascular Logistics, not only do we have a very robust physician representation on the board, but we have 9 physician advisory councils that are hyper-focused on their area of expertise, whether that's research or structural heart or PAD or CTOs, CHF, you name it. We have more than now 45% of our physicians involved in clinical leadership of the platform. And they are driving 100% of our, clinical directions are driven by our physicians.
Super interesting. I think that makes sense to me, and probably a thing that probably makes sense to the physicians who are watching this right now. This has been really interesting. This is a thing that, we cover a lot, but maybe don't have a lot of transparency into, at least for myself. So it's been really, really interesting to learn more about cardiovascular logistics and private equity and cardiology. I'm definitely going to be watching it with similar interest over these next couple of years to see everything take shape, and wish you the best of luck in delivering the best care possible for your patients and for your physicians that are on your team.
Jake, again, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thanks for calling. Thanks for watching, everyone.